Amen. Well, we are in Ephesians has been kind of our key verse, Ephesians chapter 3. And if you have your Bible today, just open that up. Turn to Ephesians. If you have, you open up your program, grab a pen. I want you to take some notes today because we'll be talking about the love of God. But in Ephesians 3, starting at verse 16, has been our key verse for this series. And it starts like this. It says, I pray that from his glorious, unlimited resources, he will empower you with inner strength through his Spirit. Then Christ will make his home in your hearts as you trust in him. Your roots will grow down into God's love and keep you strong. And here's the heart of it. And may you have the power to understand, as all God's people should, how wide, how long, how high, and how deep his love is. May you experience the love of Christ, though it is too great to understand fully. Then you will be made complete with all the fullness of life and power that comes from God. We would hope that in this season of your life that you would begin to experience how wide, how long, how patient. We're talking about how wide God's love is. It allows us to love people that have even hurt us and abandoned us and betrayed us. How long that it's enduring, that the Bible says that God's love, it continues on forever. There's an eternal principle to God's love. And today we're going to talk about how high God's love is. And we live in a transactional world. We live in a world where we just make transactions every day. Many of us, it's just like it's a commercial, consumer kind of world that we live in, and we're making transactions every day. I read this week that Visa processes, get this, 150 million transactions a day. And if you do the math on that, that is 1,600 transactions every second of every day. Transaction. All over the world, transactions are taking place all the time. Some of you are like, I know, I'm part of the problem. I'm swiping the card, putting the chip in way too much during the day. And it's funny how quickly kids pick this up. Many of you are parents, you totally understand like this transactional kind of world. My mind goes to, I coach football, and every year I kind of give some of the players, I coach the freshmen, so they're still kind of like middle schoolers, and it's good to give them some incentives. And sometimes in some football games, I'll say, okay guys, if you do this, I'll buy a pizza, this next week. And if they do it, like I'll say like, okay, it's got to be like a shutout. So they got to score. Our defense has to not allow them to score any points. And if they do that, then I own pizza. And it never fails. It's not even, they don't even give me 12 hours. It's like they're riding the bus back home from the game, and they're like, Coach, where's our pizza? And I'm like, guys, I just got on the bus with you. And it's like the next day, they're like, where's our pizza? You owe us pizza, Coach. You promised us pizza. And I'm like, you guys are killing me. Give me at least 48 hours to scrounge up some cardboard pizza for you guys to eat. But there's this transactional kind of culture that we're in. It's just like, you owe me, Coach. And many of you have been there where it's the you owe me kind of dynamic that we have in this world. And there's transactions that go on all the time. By the way, I pay up. In case you're wondering, I give the boys pizza. They're good. It might not be the best pizza, but it's pizza. Here's the deal though. Transactions work, and they work well, except when it comes to love. You see, in this transactional world that we live in, we've taken love and we've made it an exchange. That there is this owing that goes on in our relationships, in our lives. I do this, you owe me that. It's conditional. There's contracts. There's strings attached. And this whole series is about us learning what love really is. And the way that we learn to understand God's love is through experiencing his love and allowing it to work in us and through us. You see, it's our heart today that we would even take it maybe a step further, that the word in the Bible that describes God's love is agape. It's this kind of word that means unconditional, that we rip up the contracts, that God's like, there's no contract involved. There's no, if you do this, then I do this. There's no strings attached. And if you ask me, Peter, do you love with any strings attached? Then I'd be like, well, of course not. I'm an unconditional, loving kind of guy, right? No strings attached. But you all be like, we know you're a liar. Because everyone loves with strings attached. We all have this, okay, even if we try and it's false humility, or, we're trying to be really, really spiritual or pious, and we're kind of like, I give all of this love out and I don't expect anything in return. But then when my birthday rolls around and I'm kind of like, well, the level of present I gave you really isn't reflected in the level of present you gave me here. But I can't say that out loud because then everyone's like, wow, what a child, but I can feel that in my heart. Or the level in which I feel like I'm being vulnerable with you doesn't feel like the level you're being vulnerable with me. Or we have all of these, and I know, I do it, you do it. We love with strings attached. There's this if-then. There's this owing. There's this transactional kind of love. And today we want to experience the fact that God's love is wide, it's enduring, it's long, and today that it's high, that there are no strings attached. Anyone ever been caught in the fine print of a contract? Meaning you thought you had something, an understanding of something, but you didn't read the fine print in something and realize, oh, this is not quite what I thought. So my first year, Heather and I were married. We were living down in California, and we were walking through the Glendale Mall, and in this kiosk, it was like, why don't you sign up for a free car? And of course, we were like, dumb, and we're like, yeah, why not? It's a Lexus. Let's drop our name in the thing. And we're like, yeah, I wanna win a car. And we didn't win a car, but we did get like a call of like, you have won. And we're like, we've won. We're so excited, newly married. We won. We're winners. Heather, we're winners. We won something. And like, you've won a vacation to paradise in Palmdale, California. And if any of you have ever been to Palmdale, California, does not equal paradise. But we didn't know that. We're newly to Southern California. We're like, we've won a vacation to paradise in Palmdale. And we're so excited. Like, come out to this ranch. You're going to have an amazing time. When we start driving out after work, after Heather was teaching, we're going to head out to Palmdale. And it's, at the end of the day, we're driving through traffic. And finally, by the time we get up to the high desert, we're driving towards this ranch. And by then it's dark. And we're driving to Palmdale to paradise. And we've noticed everywhere we go that there's these signs that just simply start to say, they're smaller, do not pick up hitchhikers. And we're like, okay, that's probably smart wisdom. That's good. And then off in the distance, we start to see this glow, this giant glow. And we're like, that must be paradise. We're headed towards paradise. And we get closer to the glow and the signs get larger. Whatever you do not pick up hitchhikers. And we're like, okay, there must be a lot of hitchhiking going on up here in Palmdale. And we're kind of heading towards paradise, toward this beautiful glow. And all of a sudden we kind of see like getting closer, like, man, there's a big fence around paradise. It's got like barbed wire on it. And all of a sudden we realize it's like, whatever you do not pick up hitchhikers. And we realize it's the state penitentiary, in Palmdale. And it's like, don't pick people up because they might have just figured out a way to get out of there. And so don't allow them into your car. And we're like, oh, okay. We're headed to paradise, right? And we kind of keep going. We kind of blow past the state pen, and we go out to this ranch. And literally, we know it's a timeshare where they're trying to build this whole new community. And half a day, we got to like ride horses and have fun by the pool. And the other half, they tried to sell us, what you've got to go through, sit through the whole. And we're like, oh, we didn't read the fine print that our week in paradise was going to be like near a prison. And I'm going to have to sit through you trying to upsell me on like, don't you want to come live in paradise really close to the state penitentiary? And we were just like, lost in the small print. Some of you have been there. Like, I don't know how many of you have ever signed on a mortgage, but like, any of you, who's in the room, like, you're fine print people? You're like, I read everything, every word. We see what's in every contract. We asked this question when we were preparing for this message for all the people around the room. And we said, in your mortgage, how many of you read every single word? And two of the guys in the room raised their hands. They said, I read every single word in my mortgage. Good news is those two leaders, they lead our finances at New Life. So, hey, we're in good hands. We're in great hands. And they said, I read every single word. I wanted to know what I was signing. But most of us, we just go, I'm good. I'm good. I'm putting new software on my computer. Just click and go. Just click and go. I agree to the terms. You bet. Just move on. But many times we can get caught in the fine print. And in a culture, in our world that's transactional, that somebody owes you, there's this whole thing of like, you get out of something what you put in it. So I'm going to get something out of this based upon what I put in it. But the gospel today declares to us that you get what Jesus put in. See, we get out, when it comes to the gospel kind of economy, we get out what Jesus put in. that Jesus paid everything, that he put everything on the line, that we owe nothing, that's the message of the cross, that's the message of Easter, that it's always been God's love. That God's love is high. And I wonder if you have a high enough view of God's love today. I wonder if I have a high enough view that says God's love is without conditions. He has paid it in full. I don't have to lower the bar of love. We don't have to cheapen it like our culture has done. That there is a fullness to God's love, that God intends for us to experience the highness, the unconditional love that he has for us, because his love for us has no strings attached. And today we want to talk about the height of God's love. In order to do this, we're going to dive into a story in the older part of the Bible, the Old Testament, the original covenant that God had. And it's one of the craziest stories in the Bible, because it's a story where God asked one of the leaders of the people of Israel to do something completely unorthodox, completely outside the box, completely even seem probably inappropriate. But God asked the leader Hosea to do something in the Old Testament that would reflect and show to the people of Israel how high his love really is. And if you're new to church, or you're new to the Bible, I'm going to just warn you right now, this is one of the craziest stories in the Bible, but I want us to hear very clearly, this story is for every single one of us. See, there's a risk, there's a chance that when we read the story, some of you are thinking, I hope the person next to me is really listening when we read this story today. Or you know someone across the room and you're like, I really hope they're paying attention today because they need to hear this. But this is a story for us all. And actually, the character that we find ourselves in this story is actually unlikely. When this story is really, we're going to read through and talk about it, we kind of tend to think that we're a certain person in this story. But through the lens of the gospel, we actually all are a different person, and we all find ourselves on level ground when it comes to the story of Hosea. Hosea is a prophet, and what that means is he is chosen by God to be able to deliver the message that God has to the people of Israel. He's one of the leaders that God speaks through. And every time the people of God would wander away, God would use someone like a prophet to be able to call them back to where they had wandered from. Come back to the heart of God. Come back to the worship of God. Don't seek out what other cultures are doing. Don't worship other gods. Come. Don't give up on our God. He is faithful. He is good. Come back to the heart of God. This was the very common message of a prophet. And then the Old Testament is filled with these stories, and it happens once again in the life and through the leadership of Hosea. And we're going to start in Hosea chapter 1, verse 2. And it starts like this. It says, when the Lord first began speaking to Israel through Hosea, he said to him, this is where it gets crazy, go and marry a prostitute so that some of her children will be conceived in prostitution. And this will illustrate how Israel has acted like a prostitute by turning against the Lord and worshiping other gods. And if I'm the prophet Hosea, I'm like, man, I must have got some wacky, what's wrong with my reception? God, I think there was a weird autocorrect thing. You typed prostitute, and I think that's a mistake. I don't think you'd want me, the prophet of the entire people that you call your own, to go marry what? I think you've got this wrong. Did I hear you correctly? And God's like, I want you to go marry a prostitute. And in this story, God is saying, because I want my people to understand how high my love really is, that there aren't strings attached, that there is a lens that God wants us to see his love through. And just for a moment, I want you to put yourself in Hosea's shoes. Here's the single guy. He is a leader within the people of Israel. He wants to get married. He's probably waiting for the exact perfect person that God has for him. I'm sure his friends have been trying to set him up. I'm sure his mother's like, I just want you to have a good girl, a good, lovely girl. We're praying for a girl. It's like, this is how I envision this. We're praying for a good, lovely girl for you, Hosea. She's going to be great. Maybe too stereotypical for you. I'm sorry if I've offended you. And here's this guy, okay, I'm a leader, I'm single, I can't wait for who God has for me. And God's like, I have a plan for you, Hosea, that maybe you weren't expecting or ready for. I want you to marry someone unexpected. Number one, it's a prostitute. And number two, God is like, because I'm going to show the people that I've called my own, that my love has no strings attached. So God tells him to marry a prostitute to illustrate how they have acted like a prostitute and have gone to go worship other gods, and to call their hearts one more time back to the heart of God, to say, you are my people, I love you, come back to this love. And I want you to catch something here. You see, the people have abandoned God, but what is he doing? You know, people have abandoned him, and God is not making them go through this like crazy gauntlet. He's not asking them to prove themselves. Okay, then if you do this, I'm going to do this. What does God do? He takes the first step. He makes the first move. He's sending Hosea to be a Jesus, a Christ figure in the Old Testament in this moment, realizing that all of the Bible points to Jesus. And we have to look through this lens and realize he is sending Hosea to speak to the people of Israel. And God is like, I'm going to use Hosea's life to show you how I respond to you, how my love reaches out and chases after you. You have to realize that God's love is wide, and it's long, and it's high, and it's deep, and it's relentless. And today we're going to see how God takes the first step, and Hosea is going to love someone who has nothing to offer him. It's like God saying, I want to show you how relentless and massive my love is. And today we want to answer this question: how high is God's love? And write this down. The first thing is that God's love goes first. God's love goes first. And so often we think that we come back to God, that we're the ones who have to take the initial step, that we have to go first, or that we have to somehow close this gap. Because many of us are here like, I know there's a gap between me and God. I know that I've broken relationship. I know that my life isn't exactly where I thought it would be at this point. There's something that I have to do about it to fix that. But in the story of Hosea, we are reminded right from the gate that God is always the one who takes the first step in restoring relationship, in reestablishing love. I love what John Stott says in Basic Christianity, which is God always makes the first move. God always makes the first move. In fact, he made the first move with Christ. He looked down upon humanity and he saw the gap, the distance, the brokenness in the relationship between God and his creation. And God said, enough is enough. And he didn't set out this thing, if you want to experience that gap to be closed up, God didn't say, you've got to go. He said, no, I'm going to take the first step. I'm going to send Jesus. I'm going to send Jesus to redeem and to restore. And God takes that first step. God is not waiting for you or for me to find our way back to him. God is always making his first move towards us. And God tells Hosea to make the first move. Hosea 1:3, it says, so Hosea married Gomer. And time out, some of you are like, really? He asked him to marry a prostitute named Gomer? Is this even real? Come on. So he marries Gomer, the daughter of Diblaim, and she becomes pregnant and gave Hosea a son. The prophet marries a prostitute. She starts a brand new life, a new reputation. She's now a better woman. You think about it, this woman is kind of rescued out of this life, and she marries the prophet of God. What an amazing moment. Now she's a mother, and she has like birthed the son of the prophet of God, Hosea. And they're married. They have a son. What a story. She's like, this is like the greatest story ever written that she could even imagine. But then there's a plot twist. Gomer, not realizing, not knowing how to live in this new life, not trying to figure out how to not live in her old ways, decides to return back to her old ways and cheats on Hosea. She has 2 more children away from Hosea, and they have a daughter, and they name her. Essentially, the name means not loved. And then she has a son. And they name him Not Mine, which I would encourage you to look for other meanings in the naming of your children. That this is not mine and this is not loved. And then Gomer runs off yet with another man and completely severs and breaks all relationship and runs away from her relationship with Hosea. And at this point, if you're Hosea, you're probably wondering, God, you're not the best matchmaker. Like I don't think you had the right plan. So you have me marry this woman. It starts out right, and then she hits eject, bails, and completely breaks her relationship with me. And God's like, don't worry. If you'll be faithful, Hosea, I'll show you the plans that I have. And there's a few things that I just want to say here that I think for some of us in this room, that the goal of your life cannot simply just be to get to the finish line of, I got married. So many times our culture just tells us the whole goal of everything is marriage. But we all know that really it's love. And the best love that we can receive and experience is God's love. And until we've experienced and received that, it's really even hard to really understand how we could extend that and experience it with one another. The other thing is people make choices. That means people, they choose brokenness over health. They choose sin over God's ways. And even people who follow Jesus, we sin and we choose brokenness. And the other thing is this, that ultimately this story isn't about our love. It's about God's love. And really the entirety of the Bible is really not about you. It's not a story about what you should do. It's not a story about how you should live. The whole epic story about the Bible is who God is and how he loves us and how he redeems us and how he restores us. Begin to look through that lens when it comes to the story of the Bible. Is it really isn't so much about, yes, does it have an internal impact on my life? Does it have like an eternal influence on my trajectory and how I should live and where I should? Yes, but the greater story is about who God is and how he loves us. And today, in seeing how God's love is an incredibly high love, we see through the story of Hosea that God's love goes first. The other thing that we see is God's love goes again. It goes first, and then it's relentless. It goes again. Gomer commits adultery more than once, and she runs after her lovers, but her lovers leave her, and she finds herself alone, and she finds herself in a place where the only thing she knows to do is, I can't go back to Hosea. I've completely severed and broken relationship. I must go back to the life that I once knew. She goes back into prostitution. And that's the downside of prostitution is it entraps people. It enslaves them. And they think if I just continue in this, somehow there'll be an end. There'll be a way out. And eventually her love bank goes bankrupt and she finds herself with an unpayable debt. And that's the message of the gospel. That's the message for all of us. You see, when we think that we're this prophet in this story, that we are Hosea, that we are the hero of the story, well, then the lens that we need to see the story through is that God is the hero of the story, and we are the unfaithful ones who have this unpayable debt that's so massive we don't even know what to do with. None of us are able to on our own to avoid the sin and the brokenness of this world, and we all find ourselves in this debt. We are all Gomer. And in that day, if you had an unpayable debt, you became a slave. You would be auctioned off. And Gomer is at rock bottom. And God tells Hosea, go to that auction and love her again. Buy her back. It says in Hosea 3, then the Lord said to me, go and love your wife again, even though she commits adultery with a lover. My wife? She's not even my wife anymore. She ran out. We've moved on. Not anymore. God says, go and love her again. And he says, this will illustrate that the Lord still loves Israel, even though the people have turned to other gods and love to worship them. That the Lord still loves us. That we need to look through this lens and realize that many of us in this place, we feel like we've gotten to that place, that rock bottom place where I've turned back to all of the things that I know will create more brokenness, but it's just the life that I know and it's the life that I can trust. And for whatever reason, I always tend to seem to go back there and there. God wants to talk to us today and say, my relentless love is chasing after you. It's pursuing you. It's coming after you. It's so high. There's no strings attached. Always going first. Always continuing to chase, to be relentless, to pursue. And at sometimes we think that we've completely exhausted God's love, that the tank is empty, that there's no more left for us. But God says, I am coming back to that auction and I am buying you back with a price. That the gospel, it wins wherever it goes. That what God did with Jesus on Easter, he's doing for all of creation every single day. The redemption is for us, that the story is good. Gomer is at a place that nobody wants her. Her net worth is next to zero. And God tells Hosea, go and love her again, because I want the people of Israel to know I will always love you. My love will always be for you. I will never give up on you. And for us today, you need to hear that. No matter where you find yourself this morning, in whatever place you find yourself, whatever auction block you feel like your life has next for you, God's like, I will always buy you back. I will always extend my love to you. My love has no strings attached. You are mine. You're my beloved. And God is saying to Hosea, Hosea, this isn't about you. This is about me and my love. And God's love is so high that even at a rock bottom, God's love pays the highest price. And that's the third thing. This morning, I asked the band to come, and we're going to wrap up today. But God's love pays the highest price. This is the message of the cross, the message of Good Friday. When we gather together and have that meal together and celebrate what Jesus has done on the cross, this is what we're talking about. The price that was paid for me. The price that was paid for you. I know some of you are sitting in the seat right now just going, I don't feel like the price tag on me is much smaller than it used to be. You know, we've all had garage sales, right? Where you have that prize thing and you stick that sticker on there and you're like, do you remember how much we paid for this portable CD player? And now I'm literally selling it for $1. And if they offer me 50 cents, sold. We've all been there. And some of us can even be sitting here this morning feeling that same way. I used to feel like I had a high value. But now, if there was a price to be put on me, it's almost a joke. And I want you to think about it. That your value is not based upon your perception of yourself. Your value is at the cross. That's your price tag. That's your value. The cross. Everything, the highest price, the highest value, the most expensive, the most audacious, crazy price tag was put on you. And Jesus said, I'll pay it. It's worth it. Every single one of you, it's worth it. Jesus on the cross said, yes, I'll pay that price. Jesus could have easily been like, how about we do something else? Some of these over here, you know, it's kind of like, these are like garage sale prices people over here. Jesus said for everyone, the highest price, that they would know that no matter where you find yourself, I will always pay that price. You are worth it. I will always go first. I will always go again. It will be relentless. And I will always have paid the highest price. Hosea 3, chapter 3, verse 2 says, so I bought her back for 15 pieces of silver and 5 bushels of barley and a measure of wine. And then I said to her, you must live in my house for many days and stop your prostitution. And Hosea buys Gomer back. Can you imagine that moment when she's at this auction moment, completely broken, completely shattered, embarrassed? I've found myself in this same place again, and she's wondering what pimp, what horrific person is going to purchase me, or what awful place am I going to be bought into that I just go be a slave and just work until my days are done, till I can either pay off my debt or till I can die. And then the voice of the bitter she hears, and it's familiar. I'll take her. Can you imagine that moment when all of a sudden Gomer goes, I think I know that voice. That can't be Hosea. And he buys her back. He says, she's mine. It's my wife, and welcomes her back into his home. And says, the only way this is going to work is you have to let go of your life of brokenness. Let go of the life of your slavery is done. You're free. You're mine. I need you to experience my love. Experience my love, my relentless love over and over and over again. And God reminds us in Hosea 3:4 that says, this shows that Israel will go a long time without a king or a prince, without sacrifices, sacred pillars, priests, or even idols. But afterward, the people will return and devote themselves to the Lord their God and to David's descendant, their king. In the last days, they will tremble in awe of the Lord and of his goodness. It says, afterwards, my people will return. And truly, if there's a returning, It's more of a repurchasing, a rebuying, that we have a Father in heaven like the prodigal son that is waiting, longing, welcoming us back, calling us, saying, I will pay that price. And we are all prodigals welcomed back into the home of our Father. That's a ring put on our finger and sandals on our feet and a cloak put on us, and said, we're going to throw a party. And this selfless, no strings attached, no contract kind of God, this love that he extends to all of us, is for us today. If you feel like you're at that auction block, that there's no way that I have any kind of future, any kind of hope, I've just damaged any kind of future, I want you to hear that familiar voice of the Good Shepherd that says, I'll pay that. In fact, the voice of the Good Shepherd says, I paid that. It's already been paid. It's already been done. The gospel is really good news. And today, wherever you find yourself, I want you to hear this very clearly. The love of God is so high. There's nothing you owe. There's no if-then contract. There's no strings attached. It's for all of us today. Every one of us are prodigals that can receive and experience incredibly high love of God. And the question I want you to ask yourself today is this: where do you need to experience God's selfless love?